know some really confident people that are not competent.
If you don't have the confidence to get out there, it's hard to do the thing. All right. Hey, everybody. We are live on a new podcast in a new place with some new people. And this week we get to have Dr. Lacey. And because of what she's done and who she is and all the things she's doing, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Lacey, so you can explain kind of who you are, what you are. But I also want to first say thank you for, one, the introduction that we got to have. It's been a few months now, obviously, but just who you are as a person, and just you're an elevating spirit and personality, and you want everybody to win, and just your spirit is infectious. And I knew it the second I saw you, and I said, you have the thing. Right. And I knew that from hello. And so anyway, I'm just grateful you're here with me. But I want you to share who you are with our audience, and then we'll dive right in.
Absolutely. So yes, I do remember you saying that, like soaked in. I was like, okay, I do have the thing. Aside from having an awesome name that rhymes, but
for sure.
Dr. Lacey. So my background, I'm a psychologist, but what I do now is I'm a confidence coach and keynote speaker. So I love to talk about psychology in the workplace, specifically around helping organizations and businesses thrive. So really getting into the concept of psychological safety. How do you create cultures where people can be themselves, speak up, disagree without fear of retaliation? I also do some individual coaching for women, specifically around confidence and how do we use the psychology to get out of our own way. And I love to help people overcome their fear of public speaking. So again, as a keynote speaker, it's what I do now, but it's not who I was just growing up. So that's kind of like the highlights. I have 2 daughters, live here in Missouri, all of the fun things. We got a new dog. We have a puppy named Delta Dawn.
Oh, love it.
She's our new addition. So that's a little bit about me. Originally from Texas, so you're going to hear the word y'all. So it comes out.
You can take you out of Texas, but not the Texas out of you, right?
That's right. No.
Yeah. So obviously tell me, with doctor in front of your name, like even just your name was Lacey, it'd still be pretty memorable. Yeah. But so tell us a little bit about kind of what you were doing before. Obviously I hear you're coaching and speaking now. Tell us a little bit about your background and obviously some of the corporate world and different things you've been doing that kind of, but I'm also very curious about your transition into what you're doing now, because we have some good energy there as well.
Yeah. So here's the short version. Moved out of my own at 16 for lots of different reasons, for family reasons, the complicated past there. Actually went on to get my undergraduate degree in psychology. A lot of people go to psychology because it's like me search. We want to understand all the things that like we didn't make sense of growing up. Went on to get my PhD in counseling and psychology. So I actually got my PhD at the age of 26. So high achiever, Enneagram 3, all of the things. And then after that, I was a staff psychologist for a year. And then I was hired on as the executive director over counseling and health services at a small liberal arts college. So really started there. Imposter syndrome hit real hard because, again, young professional. I was also a professor, grew in my role as associate dean at the college, taking on more responsibilities, really just loved leadership. I was kind of surprised by that because I loved working with clients in therapy, but I loved developing my staff and like just people. So that really came out. And then I actually was encouraged to apply for the vice president role. I interviewed, got a phone interview, didn't even get an on-campus interview. Found out from a friend on the search committee that I was not given the opportunity because they were given the directive to hire a man. So I had no chance at all, which again, at that time, it just was like kind of like confirmation bias of like, I'm not good enough, which was not true. I was way qualified. And so a year went by, they hired a man, didn't work out. And then the opportunity came up. And so for myself, that was such a pivotal moment because I was reading a book by Sally Hegelstein and Marshall Goldsmith, How Women Rise. And it really broke apart for me all the ways I was playing small, holding myself back in my career. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go for this again. And I did. Went to the different president at the time. And I was like, here's why you're going to hire me. I'm awesome. I'm amazing. I said it way better than that, but that was the general gist. And he gave me an opportunity. I was appointed interim, and then I was permanent VP for 6-7 years. And loved working with students, loved the leadership piece. But for myself, really towards the end, definitely hit burnout because during COVID, I was the chair of our task force. So that was super fun. Mm-hmm. And that last year really found myself in a toxic workplace. And it was a very male dominated space. I was the only female VP for many years. And I really just wanted to pour back into women. So I launched and left. Scariest decision of my life. left and started my own business with coaching and speaking and have loved every single day of it. But it was that goal to create places, workplaces that are safe. And also, I have two daughters. And so I want them to grow up seeing more confident women in leadership and seeing workplaces that also encourage that and that there's that kind of match that creates the magic. So that's kind of my general story of where I'm at now, and love working with all of the different things in terms of speaking and individual coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that journey. And there's something, we actually have some talking points because what you talk about is so relevant for our audience. And, and like I told you, as we were kind of ramping up for this, living with intention, reshaping mindsets, and looking at the world through a grateful lens. What we always laugh about is that means we can talk about whatever we want because I can spin something into all those things. But one thing I want to lean in on, if you're willing to kind of share a little bit, because I think, as we think about success and we think about pursuing what we love to do, oftentimes we don't consider what is driving us to do what we want to be doing and why we want to be doing it. And it sounds like, because my story is similar in some regards, but it sounds like it's more, and I'm going to use a couple of quick word flips, but kind of turning some pain into purpose and some wounds into wisdom. And then you decided, you know what, that's not true. The things that were being said and the things that you were feeling like you said, the confirmation bias, some of that, but really thinking about, I know it can be and should be different. And now I'm going to be the one who's going to help it become different. Tell me how you got from the not getting the chance to, imposter syndromes to, because I know you and I've had the chance to hear you speak a little bit, and just the conviction.
Yeah.
Like, it's true what you're doing, and but that compels people. So obviously there's a lot of people listening who are probably going through something or went through something terrible or hurtful or something that they really challenged at them and made them question who they are and what they were worth and all the things. But for somebody like you to take some of those moments into what you've taken it into, I love to learn that about people, kind of like what made them want to do that.
Yeah. So for me, there's definitely this theme, like as you're talking now, it's all coming to pieces, but even growing up, again, love my family. They're good people, but at the end of the day, I was different and I wanted to be different. And so it was like, in a lot of ways, I had more examples of what not to do than what to do. And that same concept applied to the workplace. I had, different bosses or VPs that were like good people, but they sucked at their job. And I was like, I could do this so much better. I know I could. And so it was like, that was that internal for me of like assessing and really understanding too. School was a safe place for me. Like growing up, I could, perform, get a good grade. It was predictable, unlike home life. And so I thought work was going to be the same way. Well, then I ended up kind of back in a similar situation where like, okay, these people, I realized, unfortunately, some workplaces, they're like dysfunctional families and they're not put the fun in dysfunctional kind of situation.
Yeah.
For people like, and again, I say that with grace because I know no one's perfect, but I really learned that like, okay, for this situation, I had to get really honest about my values, what's important to me. And it was an integrity thing too, for myself. Okay, I would see these leaders. Okay, what am I going to do about it? Well, then I'm going to go for the job. And really, I didn't want the VP job because I wanted a title and the raise. Those things were great. I loved it. But it was because I kept seeing our students or our staff being hurt by not having a good leader. So it was for myself of really being clear on what my purpose was. And then also kind of my ego, but overcoming imposter syndrome and that confidence, that's just hard because many years and you're in these spaces. And I was in a lot of spaces where people didn't look like me. I was younger. I was, all of the things. I was the only woman. And so we would feel different, but different doesn't have to equal bad. Like I had a different perspective and I had to be really grounded in who I was, my values, my identity, and show up authentically. And sometimes the people I coach with now, that's what's really hard is they end up in these spaces that don't enforce that and they become a chameleon or they hide. And a lot of it's protection and safety. They lose their voices. And so that's why it's like my passion of like, I want to help women find their voice again, especially if they've been in those situations.
Yeah.
So that was a lot there, but there's all of the themes, as you said, that I was like, yeah, it really makes sense. A lot of those examples, sometimes we think we're going to have this great mentor that's going to show us the way. And sometimes we actually learn more from the people of like what not to do. And we find those mentors and inspiration in other realms rather than this traditional route of here's my boss that's supposed to lead the way. or parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you bring up such a great point too. And this is where like not separating our personal and professional life as far as a lot of people, self-awareness is key and your natural tendencies to seek, like you were kind of saying, like you found certainty and predictability in the school. And so you poured into that because you wanted that and you didn't have it at home, or some people, maybe they have it at home and they don't have it in the other. And so it's just really, I love watching people get to know themselves
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and not who they think they should be, but who they actually are,
Yeah.
and kind of
And
what.
loving their imperfections. Like that's what I love. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not perfect. Like, but I know things that I'm not great at, but I find those funny or like, it's just part of who I am. So embracing those imperfections is also really beautiful to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you talked about confidence, obviously you said that's one of the things that you love to talk about. Confidence, I'm not a huge fan of the fake it till you make it, in the sense
Nope.
that, and I'm sure you probably aren't either, but it's just this idea of authenticity. But
Yeah.
the difference between, I have a very distinct difference between these two words, but it's confidence because you know who you are. I have two different parallels. I'll touch on the second one in a second, but also confidence that you want to portray so other people think you're competent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you touch on those two?
Oh, absolutely.
That little difference.
Yeah. So first, I always say confidence is a skill, and like we can
Okay.
learn it because we truly think that like, oh, these people are just born confident, or like you
Mhm.
and I are both speakers. People are like, oh, you've just always been a great speaker. No, that is not the case. Like I've learned it's skills, and I'm still getting better every day. But when it comes to the confidence competence loop, I know some really confident people that are not competent.
Mhm.
And I know some really competent people that are not confident. So it doesn't always equate, but it's like really that internal. So I love what you said of like the self awareness. Like we've got to get to know ourselves. And especially when it comes to confidence, it shows up in all kinds of ways. And there's so many socio-cultural experience things that influence how we think about confidence. So a lot of the women I coach, when we think of the stereotypical male confidence, it's like interrupting people, bragging about yourself, like doing those things. For women, a lot of times that doesn't feel good. So, how does confidence look in terms of how do we verbally communicate? How do we nonverbals, eye contact, dress? Like, I love breaking apart just those different pieces of how you feel in your body, but the authenticity is key that you said there. Like, that's a key component when we talk about confidence.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like it is there's another convincing yourself, right? So like this idea of affirmation.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't say that you are talented or skilled, then you start to question whether or not you're talented and skilled. And this thing that I've recognized, and confidence and arrogance were the other two words that I was going to bounce
Yeah.
against you. And really, arrogance, in my opinion, is the hope that one is able to, or the confidence is the knowing that one can.
Yeah.
And like the people who say they're the greatest at anything are often trying to talk themselves into being confident, in my opinion. So what's
Oh,
your
yeah.
thoughts on that and the psychology around that?
Oh, totally agree with that. I mean, again, and I don't want to like downplay, like that's a good tactic. I'm
Sure.
with you at the fake it till you make it is not helpful, but sometimes we do need that like internal pep talk aspect of it.
Yeah.
But there's also like, I like the grounded confidence. And you even touched on some other components of like internal versus external validation. Like for me to say I'm good, okay, do I feel that myself or do I need other people to tell me that I'm good? And again, not saying one is better than the other, but if you're always outsourcing validation or outsourcing your confidence, that's not real it's not sustainable confidence. And so like those are the different components when you're talking about that of just like how we feel in our body. But the fake it till you make it, there are times where I want people to try on an identity or try on a
Mm.
skill and learn something. I'm all about learning. And so I think where we get into some of the other aspects is like perfectionism comes in. I've got to do something perfect. And then also, a lot of times, confidence is truly on the other side of taking action. Like, I got to just take
Mm.
action, and then I will start to feel more confident in whatever task or situation I'm in.
Yeah. So do you find that I feel like we may talk about confidence all the time because I'm so intrigued, but because it's, the idea of, and I don't mean to wordplay a lot, it's just a lot of things you're saying, but this because it's internal for me, and it's been a huge part of my story. That's kind of why I've had to learn the difference between a lot of these two words.
Yeah.
And but confirmation versus affirmation,
Yeah.
and that's where I've kind of learned. So just even when I said to you that you have the thing, when I first met you, it wasn't, when you said, oh, like I have the thing, it wasn't that you didn't think you had the thing. It was just like, I listened for other people to say it was great, you did this, but I'm
Yeah.
not then determining because you said it, I am.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think because of how I said it and who I am, what I said was meaningful is more
Yeah.
what I'm listening for there, not that I'm good or not good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, to me, it's just like icing on the cake. Like,
Sure.
I still remember you saying that because it stood out to me and Alex, and I was like, okay. Like, I felt seen in some ways. And it was also like, I know internally, okay, I do have the thing, but what does that mean? And so seeing in someone else's eyes, I think
Yeah.
that's part of it too. And that's where I love it. You said like the confirmation versus affirmation, because affirmation is really internal. Like, I know, and then like I'm getting confirmed from other people too. So that whole dynamic of what are you constantly seeking for? And I see this in the workplace. I will also say sometimes too, women I see struggle with compliments. And so before, I think an earlier version of me, if you would have said that, I would have downplayed it. I would have said absolutely not. But I have done so much work on myself that I can be like, okay, yeah, thanks. Like, I can take that in and receive it. And so a lot of times too, I coach women on just like, just say thank you. Like, don't downplay it. It's not your job to disagree with other people's opinion of you. Like, if they're sharing that, you may not feel it yet. You may not internalize it yet, but you can just say thank you. And maybe one day you'll get there. So again, there's all of those different aspects of like our internal world that we're navigating when people say things to us or what we're saying to ourselves. And inner talk, like I love to go into like our dialogue, our inner critic. I always joke that, again, my name's Casey Lacey. So a lot of times people read it as Cassie. And so a lot of times I teach them like, okay, I've named my inner critic Cassie because she's an assy. Like, she's not always kind. Tries to protect me. A lot of times she just needs a nap or she needs to go eat a Snickers. Like, she just needs, but she means well. And so it's really understanding what are the things you're telling yourselves and how do they serve you and what are you letting drive you? So.
Wow. Yeah, that like actually gave me chills thinking about that. What do you tell yourself moment? Because there's some people in my life that there's a lot of people, actually, most of the people in my life, when I give them a compliment, and I grew up with two sisters and my mom. I mean, I have a great dad and, family and grandparents and everything, but I was just naturally, I had this affinity towards my grandmas and my sisters. And so, luckily I'm the baby and the only boy. So whatever box I just got put into, I'm comfy in here. The temperature is perfect. I'm very well fed and I'm comfy. So, but the thing about that though is really kind of understanding the things that we say about ourselves are often the things that may end us being held back from ever actually truly now seeing ourselves. And so when I give compliments to, some people that I'm the most grateful for and they doubt me, it's not that they're doubting me. It's because it's in dissonance to how they see themselves. And it's if like the overarching message really is, if we don't believe something about ourselves, it will never matter how many people tell us that same thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think confidence honestly comes from, as far as like when you feel a certain way wearing a certain thing, you already have the confidence because of how you feel about how you look in the certain thing, and so maybe some of that confidence really isn't coming. I mean, it is action, right? I think that the best way out of an overthinking loop is to stick your foot out and start taking some action, in my opinion. But it's hard to do, right? If you don't have the confidence to get out there, it's hard to do the thing. So I think that, how do you kind of work with people who are struggling with the confidence to start, even though they have all the capabilities and the skills and the resources and the background and all of that? Like, what do you kind of work with to kind of make them take that first step?
Yeah. I mean, awareness is key. So it's really understanding where those limiting beliefs are, where did they come from? And then also, again, it's like trying on some of those new things. The power of yet is helpful. So again, that's not the fake it till you make it, but the power of yet. I don't feel this way yet. That's even shifting. And a lot of times too, when you think of that internal dialogue and we're saying negative things to ourselves, I work with clients of like, okay, yes, we could do, say, the opposite, but a lot of times there's power in neutrality.
Mm.
So there's power in just like, okay, say I'm a terrible speaker. Well, like, I'm an okay speaker. Like, I know how to use words. Like, you can kind of go there instead of like, I'm great. And so it's really just understanding where you're at in that spectrum. But it's a lot of awareness of how often, because so many times our negative thoughts are just, they're all the time and they're unconscious. They say on average, we have anywhere from like 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
Most of those are negative because it's our brain trying to protect us. So we have to actively work against that. And that's why I love the work you do of like gratitude. Like we have to work on that practice because it's retraining our brain, which is again, trying to keep us safe, but it's still in that like saber-toothed tiger is going to come in and get me. Our brains can't differentiate that from like a negative email that we got from our boss. Like we physically have the same reaction. So we've got to retrain it to understand what we're doing with those thoughts and really slowing down because sometimes it's just so automatic.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that you have to help people kind of develop? Do you find self-awareness as a skill as well?
Oh, yeah. Confidence is a skill, self-awareness is a skill, and it's like muscles. You got to train them.
Sure.
And like you have to constantly work on them. So that's where like, again, people do different things of like journaling, or I love for people just to do a self-awareness audit or a thought audit. Like, what are the thoughts you have throughout the day? What are the thoughts you have when you look in a mirror? What are the thoughts you have when you're at work? Like there's contextual, or there's certain people you have different thoughts around. And so it's getting really granular and analyzing what thought patterns you have in the different situations and contexts too, that then becomes your life, because our brains, like our internal world, becomes our life. And so how much of that is in this space that's no longer serving you or moving you towards your goal or who you want to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so intrigued by, honestly, I feel like when you say it's a skill, I've never really thought of it that way, to be totally honest, but it really kind of sparks it's growth, right? It's where I am now versus where I want to be, and how do I close the gap? But also being confident doesn't mean always never failing, right? It doesn't mean never failing. So what is your go-to? What are your thoughts on maintaining levels of confidence through the adversity and through when things don't go the way you thought they would, and through, if you want to call it, failures? I don't really love the word failures because but honestly though, but honestly though, like you said earlier, I want all of the clients I work with and the audiences I get to speak to, I want them to feel all of their emotions. Yes. Because if I went through my life and didn't recognize when I felt like a failure, didn't recognize when I made a bad choice, when I didn't do what I said I was going to do, I wouldn't be the person that I am. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I never want to like numb that. But it's also, you can't stay there. You just visit there, recognize why you feel it, and then what can you do differently the next time? Which is not easy to do when, it's like sometimes failures people see as a detour. Like maybe you shouldn't be doing this anymore. But some people, probably like you, are like, yeah, but I just need to find a different way to do it.
Yeah. You said like two great things there of like, okay, first of all, there's the failure piece of it and like our thoughts, but like it's also emotions. And so like when it comes to experience our emotions, so when we talk about developing this skill of self-awareness, I talked about the skill of like our thoughts, but there's also the self-awareness of our emotions. And I love this quote. I stole it from somebody. I don't know who it was, but it was like, the thing about emotions is they're just information. Like that's true. But emotions are like driving in the car with kids. You don't let them drive, but you don't lock them in the trunk either. They'll find a way out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of just like science behind it too. Like if we suppress emotions, they're going to come out. The body holds signs. Like for me, that's where it's like checking in with my body. That's where I can feel my emotions. But too, a lot of socialization, and this is more so on the men's side, that there has been the socialization to not express or feel our emotions, or the only acceptable emotion is anger. And so it's understanding that context too, and how you were brought up when it comes to like the emotions piece of it, because that's really, really key, especially when it comes to like this confidence and who I am. Interesting though, in the context of workplace, there's still this idea of like emotions don't have a place in the workplace. Well, people are in the workplace and people are emotional. And so it's really understanding emotional intelligence, which is a great skill. Like to me, actually, women are higher. They tend to be in terms of emotional intelligence, my ability to understand my own emotions, someone else. And then that's really helpful because you think about what you and I do as speakers or coaches, it's that emotional connection. When I'm speaking, I'm taking someone on an emotional journey. And that's the best thing I can do, is make them feel seen, heard, understood, and then really connect with their emotions. And then also what can be different. So it's inspiring hope, which is an emotion, and how can we make a different change? So that was one thing as you were talking, is just like that emotional experience and getting really clear on that to come out.
Yeah. Do you feel like people can, I'll say the word borrow, right? Maybe it's amplify, but confidence. So when people see, so that's also one of the things when I speak, is I want people to feel themselves and see themselves in my story, not in my story necessarily, but maybe have the emotion they're feeling remind them of their story.
Yes.
Because I'm, I get emotional up on stage, and we were talking about it at the event we were at in Columbia, and a guy was like, I get emotional. Should I not talk about the
Yes.
thing? And I
And we're
said,
like, no, please do
talk about the
get emotional.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, talk about it. And I said, I've been talking, speaking for the last 7 years about the same story, not about the same story, but somewhat of the same story. And I still get choked up and emotional on stage.
Yeah.
And the guy that I was talking to at that event said, pure panic, that if he
Yeah.
starts to cry, people are going to lose it. I said, no, when you start getting, obviously there's a fine line of bawling and choked up, right? But
Yes.
when you are vulnerable in that way,
Mm-hmm.
they are with you,
Yes.
and showing up for people in our lives. And I'm sure you're considered probably a pretty positive person all the time, but sometimes that creates this space of other people trying to compete, right? I'm going to get to the borrowing confidence statement that I made in a second, but trying to compete with your positivity, trying to compete with your confidence. But I think sometimes people can gain confidence by hearing kind of a little bit more about why you're confident, not how great you are, but what are the things that you're doing greatly to feel confident.
Yeah. And the things that you've overcome, for sure. I would say now more than ever, people are craving authenticity.
Hmm.
And where we really connect is emotions. Like if I say I'm sad, you know what that feels like. Now there's also like sympathy versus empathy. Like, have you been through it, or can we just relate on the emotional level? But when I tell my stories, that's where people then can see themselves and connect. And then there's that emotional feeling. And so that creates that connection. And also, like you said, they can see this other side of potential. I will say there's lots of studies that show like confidence is contagious, like emotions are contagious in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, it's really good to like do an energy audit. I always say, like, who do you surround yourself with? Because I always say you're the 5 people that you're around. Your network is your net worth, all of the stuff. And I truly believe that, because we do absorb that, and we also learn from those people around us. So there's a lot of different pieces of like the emotions and it being contagious and us feeling that. And how we navigate that, and how it also affects how we show up. If you're constantly, again, I work with a lot of women that are in toxic workplaces. And so when they're in those spaces, it really starts to erode at their self-confidence. And so they're in this kind of like deep place and dark place, because I've been there too,
Yeah.
where they doubt themselves. And that is exhausting in lots of different ways. So, and then you get into the comparison game, which is another story. But yes, there's the comparison game that really plays out in our head too, of who we should be, or if this person's better, all the things.
Yeah. Do you feel like with your experience that you've seen in the business side of things, like some of your clients and obviously some of the groups, I'm also intrigued by some of the groups that you've been speaking to. I know you've been speaking a ton, which I'm super inspired by as well. And you're kind of touching people on a human level. And
Yes.
even though you may be talking at a work level or a professional level with some of them, but have you kind of recognized, I mean, I don't know if the word's burnout, because I did a talk talking about finding balance in an unbalanced world. And you were like, hey, that's my jam. Like, that's what I do. That's one of my things. Right. So obviously, like, having confidence to do more
Yeah.
then can fall into a space to where I have to be more. I have to apply for the thing because I'm confident, and because but when you show confidence, then you get more opportunities, then you have the role, and then you start to kind of just go in this steam engine mode. And then you kind of look around and you lack confidence at home, or lack sense of joy at home, because you're so much of that person I am at work. And then you create this cognitive dissonance of, I make decisions all day. And I know a lot of people like, I make decisions all day, and people are asking me questions all day long. And the last thing they want to do when they get home to their family is make a decision or answer a question. But like, really, when you peel back, like, I don't think people really want to feel that way at home, but they feel like they have to be that way at work.
Yeah. We operate on so much of the shoulds. And yeah, you're definitely calling out a lot of my story there because for myself, like I poured so much into my job as a vice president because it was this dream I thought I was supposed to want. There was
Mm,
like this security of this, salary, the golden handcuffs, all of the different things. And I was no longer pouring into myself or I had
mm,
nothing left to give to my family. I was completely burnt out. And again, it is a thing that people are like, I'm like, it's not a diagnosis, but it's a collection of symptoms. And we could get into what burnout symptoms all are the things. But
yeah.
really, decision fatigue, the last freaking question that I wanted to come home was like, what's for dinner? First of all, I don't cook. Like, I'm not a cook. And my husband would be like, what? I'm like, I don't care. Go eat grass. Like, I could care less because for me, I was making decisions. I had compassion fatigue. I wasn't taking care of myself, literally to the point like since I've left the workplace, I've lost 90 pounds because I was, again, giving so much and not taking care of my basic needs. And so, really
Mm,
shifting out of that place. But I see people that do that because they have this idea of what it should be. I see women get in the way of like, I'm the martyr, I have to take care of everybody. And we just fall in these identities that also are not helpful. I mean, they always talk about the airplane, put your mask on first, before you put on your child. And that's the reality of life too. How are we taking care of ourselves so we can fully show up for people? And I'm not saying like self-care, like bubble baths, like what is genuine? How are you pouring into yourself and taking care of your basic needs, but also kind of the higher level needs too?